Well, hello everybody. Welcome to P.B.M. Money. Today I'm going to talk about something that I've never heard talk about before. But I have found it to be very, very important as you go down your journey to financial independence. Now, I think we've all heard of an emergency fund, and I think that we all know what it's for. An emergency, right? Or is it? Let me paint you a picture. You work for a year to build your emergency fund, and you get X amount of dollars in there. And then you have an emergency, whether it's in your house, in your car, but you have an expense that you now have. Now, the impulse is, hey, I've got the cash, let's go get it, pay for it, be done with it, and move on down the road. You could do that. But at the end of the day, after your emergency is gone, you're still out the money. So all the time that you spent building up your emergency fund, you just wiped out with one bill. So, should we really take the money? I say no. I say emergency fund means crisis fund. And let me give you an example. And I want you to think about when you have an emergency and an emergency fund, I want you to look at it like you don't have any money. Remember the days when you had no money? That's the mindset you need to be in. And I'll give you an example. Before I started saving or was able to save, I was driving junkers all the time because I couldn't afford a decent vehicle. And I had a vehicle where the transmission went out, and I had the choice of a rebuilt one or a new one. And the guy told me, if you get the rebuilt one, there's no guarantee. But it was $250 cheaper. So I said, let's do the rebuilt one. Well, I put that one on my credit card, so I'm making payments on that one. It goes out again. This time I said, let's do the $1,850 one. I had no room on my credit card and I had no cash. So how was I going to pay for this? Well, it took me a while to figure it out. I found an independent mechanic who was just getting started, and I said, hey, if you'll do this and put it in, I will come in here and I will pay you $100 a month in cash, and I will be here. And he said, okay. And I mean it. On the first of every month, that was the first bill I paid was $100. My point was this. I had the same emergency back to back, and I had to go figure something else out. And I did. Just because you have money in the bank does not mean you need to spend the money that's in the bank. So my point is, when you have an emergency fund and you have an emergency come up, figure out another way. I'll tell you another example. I know, well, the last property that I bought had no stove in it. So I needed to go buy a stove. Now, fortunately for me, the house rented very quickly, and I didn't have time to go do what I wanted to do. But here's how I was going to do it. I was going to go find me a credit card with a sign-up bonus, get the credit card, and then go buy the stove on my credit card to take down the spend. Then when I rented the house out, take the cash flow, pay the credit card. That way I'm getting a sign-up bonus, I'm getting a new credit card, I got the new stove in the apartment, didn't cost me a dime. That's how I planned on doing it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess fortunately, the couple that moved in there needed a stove, obviously, quickly. And so they volunteered to go put it on their credit card and just take it off of the rent the next month. And I thought, okay, it's not worth upsetting somebody to do it my way, so I did it their way. It's still, because I had just bought the house, I had a 2-month window there where I didn't have to make any payments. So I mean, it still didn't cost me. I just didn't get the credit card or the sign-up bonus out of it, but whatever. Here's another option when you have an emergency with your car or an appliance or anything. What if you just put it on an existing credit card that you have, assuming you have a credit card, or a new one if you've got the time to get there, and then you moved it onto a transfer credit card where you're not paying interest. That way, I mean, you'll have to carry a balance, okay, so that will affect your credit score, but not too badly. But you can still make monthly payments on it, and you're not paying interest, and you get your emergency taken care of, and you haven't touched your emergency fund. The goal here is to change the way you think. People always want to rush in and do the quick and easy thing to solve their problems so they don't have to think about it or sweat over it. My view on it, and I think the view of most people that have money, is take your time, figure out the best solution to the problem. How can I do this smartly and do it well so that it doesn't cost me a lot of money? And if you think about it, there are many ways to do that. Now, I was forced to do that kind of thinking because I had no money. If I had an emergency, I had to be creative. As an example with the transmission. Another thing that I learned after I had several credit cards is I thought it made more sense before I became a little bit more educated on credit cards. I thought it made more sense to spread the bills out over different credit cards so that it didn't look like I was pushing my credit. What I found is that's not true. If I had the room on one credit card to put the emergency on, I would do that because it would raise the minimum only a couple of dollars. But if I put it on a new credit card, the minimum is going to be probably $30 or $35. So you use the same credit card, and it only affects your minimum balance. It increases the amount that you have on that card, and that you're going to have to pay every month. But at least you have the option of doing that. And I would do that. The point here is to try to change the way you think from just writing a check and being done with it to trying to figure out, what if I didn't have money? How would I solve this problem? And try to go about it that way. it's not about being cheap. It's about trying to figure out, because as an example, if you're saving $100 a month into your emergency fund and a transmission goes out, that's $2,000. That's almost 2 years of savings that's gone with one emergency. And while we're talking about emergency funds and time, here's one thing that I have decided, and I'm going to start teaching this. Everybody wants to make a recommendation of how much you should have in your emergency fund. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say the minimum you should throw everything you have at it to get started, but once you get to a set dollar amount, and that varies depending on where you live in the country, but once you get to that set amount, I would cut that down drastically, but I would never, and I don't care if I've got 5 years living expenses in the bank, you always contribute to your emergency fund because you don't know how big the emergency is going to be. So I would make it, and I have my savings done automatically at the credit union. So I have an account, and every month they take out X amount of dollars and put it in my emergency fund, and I plan on doing that till the day I die. Whether I have 1 month, 10 months, or 10 years worth of living expenses in there, don't ever stop contributing to your emergency fund. Because as soon as you do, that's when the emergency will be bigger than the cash. Well, I just wanted to come on today and talk about, just because you have the cash doesn't mean you should spend the cash. Give it some thought, make good choices, and try to protect your assets. You guys have a great day, a great week, and happy investing.